You are Locked On Coogs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Park Ranger Locked On Coogs here, talking about Houston and Kansas, and we do need to address the elephant in the room in this one. And that elephant is, why should Houston even play this one? Houston's got the conference regular season championship in the bag, secured that outright over the weekend. You likely win it by several games, no matter what you do on Monday and Saturday. You got Kansas on Monday night, and as much as ESPN, put that game there to be a potential regular season title game back when they set the schedules, it's not. Houston's got the regular season title in the bag, and Kansas is way far out of it. And you got several days before you head to Waco to play Baylor next Saturday. A lot of people, not necessarily me, a lot of people do value the Big 12 tournament that comes after that. So theoretically, you'd be saving legs for that. Or you could punt that as well and just be saving all your legs for whatever seed you get in March Madness. I think that thought by and large is a lot of people look at spreadsheets and data and not games. Talk about that in a second. But I also think that the other part of that is like some people don't really care what seed you get in the tournament. They care more about being healthy. And I think there's some validity to that. Houston's likely going to be the third or fourth one seed if they win as many games as I think they should in the next 2 weeks. They could also become a fifth or sixth overall team, which would put them at the top 2 seed-ish area. And the argument essentially is if you fall to the 6th team, you're playing the 3 or the third 1 seed. If you're the third 1 seed, you're playing the 6th team or the, second 2 seed. You're playing a lot of the same kind of competition and the theoretical, hypothetical Elite 8 matchup anyway. Shouldn't the more important thing be to be healthy if really you kind of jumbling up all those 2 through 6 matchups? And I really do think there's validity to that. And I get why rest is good, right? Especially after the gauntlet that is a 20-game Big 12 schedule. One way to negate that would be to kind of rest your guy for the final 2 of them because you've got the conference championship in the bag, because 20 games in conference is just crazy. It's so crazy they're not going to do it next year, right? It's that kind of crazy. But I think there's a couple things here. One, you can't take your foot totally off the gas and just completely get out of rhythm, right? You got a good thing going right now. You got to keep some rhythm and keep some things going. Second, you're not infallible. You have trouble with the press here and there. You go through scoring drought. You got to figure some stuff out when Milos is an on point guard. You got some stuff to figure out. No team in college basketball is infallible. And that includes Houston. And so you can't just completely take these couple games off. Game reps are irreplaceable. You can't just practice things in practice and expect them to work in Indianapolis or whatever in a few weeks, right? I mean, you got to actually work things out in games and kind of game situations. I also think there's something about being in game shape. We saw in last year's NCAA tournament that the second round matchup with A&M can go to crazy depths of your roster. You don't know who's going to be on first and who's going to play and who's going to get what minutes, right? So you got to have some idea of what you're doing there. All that is to say, I think you play your guys within reason for these last few regular season games in the Big 12 tournament. The only thing I think I'd asterisk that with is Emanuel Sharp's ankle injury. If that's really bugging him, let him sit, right? We've had different parts of the year where guys are sick. If guys are feeling a little sick, let them stay home, right? Last year, J1 was going through the conference tournament as the mummy man with his leg all wrapped up, his hand all taped up, whatever. Hey, maybe rest that kind of thing, right? Don't play with those nagging injuries. Or if you have minute restrictions, really stick to the minute restrictions or whatever, right? But if you sit Emanuel again on Monday night against Kansas, Terrence should get full run, and everyone on the floor should be playing full minutes. Now, am I going to be mad if You put Mercy Miller in earlier than normal? No. Does Said Lot get to go get his run at Hunter Dickinson? Of course he should. He beat him up last year. Why not beat him up? Like, Said did great against him, I thought, in the game that was in Fertitta last year. Why not let Said go again, right? Am I a big fan of Cordell? Absolutely. So Cordell gets some run. Let's find that backup point guard, right? Let's do those kinds of things, right? Within reason. But I don't think you just don't play a healthy LJ Cryer. I mean, the guy's kind of climbing up all-time Big 12 player rankings. Let him go earn it. Let him go do it, right? I don't think you just don't play Miles Suzanne. I mean, he's got to work through and make sure he's orchestrating games. You don't want him to have like some rust when you get to the important games, right? We've seen what this team looks like when he's turned the ball over. You got problems. And so you want to make sure you kind of keep that rust shaken off for as long as possible. So again, I think that the Big 12 conference tournament's as important as the regular season when the Houston just won? No. Do I think that it's worth like playing on an injury? No. Do I think that you got to play and like play your guys outside of these potential nagging injuries? Yeah, you can't replicate this otherwise, right? And you know, if that were the case, you know, like, well, why are we playing them in the round of 64 against Timbuktu State? And then you remember like the that game a couple years ago where Northern Kentucky gave you more run than you thought in the first half, right? Like that round of 32 matchup has been hard for Houston, whether it was Auburn or A&M or whomever, right? Like these been a couple of these, right? And so I think you got to keep running through full speed to the extent that you can. Do I think you put in the subs early? Maybe a little bit. Do I think that you let guys like Emanuel sit out with the ankle kind of stuff? Maybe he's healthier than I'm realizing. I haven't talked to Emanuel about it or anything like that, but I think if a guy's got a nagging injury, let him sit with it, right? And I think that's about the extent of the rest you go, especially given that this week you got Monday night against Kansas. You've got a long break until going to Waco on Saturday. And if I were a gambler, I bet they don't go to Waco until Saturday because the game is so late at night, Saturday night. You can get up and take the bus over Saturday morning and be fine. So I'd imagine that's a lot of time you could sleep in your own bed. A lot of time you get to hit your own Normatec at the house, right? Like those kinds of things that I think they'll be okay with. And so while people are wondering why play at all, I think you gotta continue to make sure that you don't get rusty and kind of keep that stuff shaken off, especially with like some breaks built in. Because as the one seed in the conference tournament, you get a double bye, so you actually get some breaks in there as well. I get that. And I understand if someone tweaks an ankle, it's going to feel like, oh, why are they even playing or whatever. But at some point, the point to play basketball is to win the games. And this is a program that prides themselves on playing hard and trying to win every single thing they do. I wouldn't try and play these guys in cards because I bet they find a way to win that as well. Now, we hear live post-game after the Kansas game on Monday night. So hit subscribe on YouTube, hit the bell so you know we're live, or you can check us out wherever you get your audio platform podcasts the next morning as well. Locked On Coogs. Remember, the Locked On Podcast Network. That means your team every day. Go Coogs.